Hello, everyone. I'm Rebecca Weber. This is your AMAC podcast, Better for America. Like and subscribe to our Rumble channel to help AMAC fight back against censorship. Now, there are so many numerous examples of a new form of canceling that threatens our society, and that is debanking. This is a new attack which has victimized so many figures, people like the MyPillow guy, Mike Lindell, and leaders of a Florida-based company, Mercola Market, and they're being threatened because of certain COVID vaccine claims that they've made. And even ambassadors such as Sam Brownback, whose Chase bank account was canceled for political and religious reasons. Now, if this is being done to them, folks, this could be done to you. Joining us today is Jeremy Tedesco. He's a dedicated legal professional and advocate for individual liberties, and he is serving as a senior counsel for Alliance Defending Freedom, or ADF. He's got a deep commitment to really defending religious freedoms and constitutional rights, and we're thrilled to have him here with us today. Jeremy, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Jeremy, there's a Florida-based retail health company, that's Mercola Market of Cape Coral. They were recently canceled by Chase Bank. Now, the bank gave no reason, which I find absolutely ludicrous. They gave no reason for shutting down their bank account. Dr. Mercola, he's been vocal about his opinions on the COVID vaccine. These are threats to our freedoms, and they don't just come from the government, but we're seeing them come from corporations like financial institutions. How do ordinary Americans protect themselves from being canceled? And what can America's corporations do to break free from this stranglehold of ESG, or environmental social governance?
Yeah, so much there. So, big picture, no American should fear that they're going to lose their bank account or their payment processing because of their religious or political views. As you're saying, and the stories you cite, there's definitely an increase in what looks like viewpoint-based cancellations of banking services. And, these stories are almost always kind of follow the same cadence and storyline. The banks don't ever say it's because of your political or religious views. What they do is they debank you, and they cite these very broad policies: risk tolerance, reputational risk, social risk. Sometimes, policies that say you promote intolerance or hate, but there's never any real clear reason often for what's going on. And many people just walk away when that happens, and they shouldn't. They should fight back. But lots of times what happens when they push back, the bank starts coming up with reasons that don't make any sense. And this is the problem with the vague policies that are really permeating the financial industry, is that allows the institutions to hide their viewpoint-based reasons, what we suspect are viewpoint-based reasons, for these cancellations behind policies that allow them to give any reason they want. It sounds kind of reasonable. I'll say this one today and then a different one tomorrow. It's exactly what happened with Sam Brownback. You brought up his situation. Chase Bank gave probably 5 to 6 reasons over the course of 2022, all of which were different and some which were inconsistent, none of which kind of withstood any scrutiny for why they debanked him. And you're left just saying, well, the only thing left is you didn't like his political or religious views. It's a real risk. And I think people need to understand the chilling effect that the threat your bank could cancel your account because of your religious or political views can have on the marketplace of ideas and people's willingness to exercise their freedoms. It's bad enough if the government is threatening you with some kind of punishment, but if you can lose your bank account over your political or religious views, that's going to have at least the same amount, if not more chilling effect than some kind of government restriction or punishment, depending on the degree of the punishment. So it's a real risk. We see this in corporate America kind of across the technological and financial sector space. These corporations getting co-opted by the left to engage in cancel culture. And it needs to stop, and we need to hold the corporations accountable.
Yeah, it's wonderful work that you're doing. Perhaps you can share with our listeners a little bit more about Alliance Defending Freedom and the great work that you do. And then share with us, what do you see as some of the most pressing legal issues relating to religious freedom and free speech? Because this is an issue that impacts every single American. But first, a little bit more about ADF, because I think it's important that average, everyday Americans know that you exist and recognize the great work that you're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Alliance Defending Freedom has been around for almost 30 years now. We're the world's largest legal organization defending free speech and religious freedom, life, and parental rights. We've won 15 cases at the Supreme Court in the last 12 years. We just won a case about a month ago, I guess, a little bit over a month ago, 303 Creative, which was a case involving compelled speech. The state of Colorado was forcing a Christian business owner to promote views of marriage through her web design business that she didn't want to promote. And we sued the state and said, look, she can promote her religious convictions related to marriage, and she doesn't have to promote same-sex marriage or other conceptions of a marriage that violate her religious convictions. And we ultimately won that case. And that's a case that's a victory for all Americans. Nobody, regardless of their religious or political convictions, should be forced by the government to speak ideas that they disagree with. That's like kind of at the heart of what the First Amendment protects. And so that was a really key, just kind of one of our big Supreme Court victories that we've had over the last 12 years, 15 of them, like I said. And, I think, from the standpoint of what are the big issues coming up, I think that parental rights and the attack from the public schools on parental rights is a huge issue, especially in the gender identity context. We have so many schools across the country that are trying to hide transitions of children from the parents and really just kind of supersede the parents' role in the lives of the children. And that's a violation of parents' rights to direct the upbringing and education of their children. So that's an enormous issue. I think it's an up-and-coming issue. Another big issue is men competing in women's sports. And so we're doing a lot of work to try to stop this phenomenon of men saying they're women and competing against women and taking away scholarships and accolades and all the things that women have benefited from under Title IX being taken away from them by the administration and other school districts pushing to allow men to compete in women's sports. So those are two big issues we're working on right now. And from a free speech perspective, free speech on university campuses is just always an enormous and looming issue. We do a lot of work in that space. We've won Supreme Court cases on free speech on college campuses. We've got a whole team dedicated to protecting the freedom of student organizations to express their ideas without censorship.
Yeah, your organization is so sorely needed, especially today. And you mentioned that you've been at this for decades now. Tell me, from your perspective, how much have you seen really a shift in societal culture over the last, say, 10 or 20 years? In other words, have things really gotten much worse? And are individual freedoms and liberties more at risk today than they were just a short handful of years ago?
I'll start with the good news. The good news is not just us, but other organizations are winning great victories at the Supreme Court protecting First Amendment liberties. So we have to keep that in place. We have to have a bulwark against government encroachment on our freedoms. And so there's a lot of good news to report on the way in which Supreme Court is handling religious freedom and free speech issues. I think culturally, though, we're definitely seeing a rise of a kind of a culture of censorship. And there's a lot of reasons for that. The universities, the social media companies, I mean, they have an immense influence on the way people understand free speech. They really do it. There's a lot of teaching that happens, I think, through the way that users of those platforms kind of interact with community standards. And so when they think, well, I can be on this platform and I don't have to encounter things that I disagree with or views that violate my view of the world, that's a real problem. And so we have kind of this culture of censorship, of safe zone, or whatever you want to call it, that a lot of people are learning in educational institutions, at the universities, through their interaction with the primary digital public square in the social media companies. And so we really need to reteach principles of the First Amendment. I mean, one of the key things about the First Amendment, the way we like to say it is, I disagree with what you have to say, but I'll fight to the death for your right to say it. I mean, we need to give other people the freedoms we want, even if we vehemently disagree with them. And that's what's being lost. It's kind of been inverted where people are like, well, I disagree with you. I'm going to fight to the death to shut you up and censor you. And that's going to lead to a whole lot of societal problems. It's only going to increase the divides and the partisanship. And I think we need to find common ground in the idea that people have these fundamental freedoms for a reason. Our Constitution protects them for a reason. And it's good for everybody to be able to exercise those freedoms because it allows everybody to have a voice and the right decisions to be made with the most information.
Thank you so much, Jeremy Tedesco. What a pleasure to have you with us today. And we applaud all of the great work that you're doing with Alliance Defending Freedom. We encourage people to learn more. They can go to your website. And thank you so much for being here. We'll be sure to update AMAC members on all of the amazing work that you're doing and continue to share this information. I'd love to have you back with us, Jeremy. Thanks again for being here.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
There's a concerted effort to intimidate and censor conservative thinkers. The very freedoms secured by our Constitution are being threatened by the most liberal progressives America has ever seen. They're trying to indoctrinate and corrupt our children in schools. They've defied the authority of the Supreme Court. They've weakened our economy with lockdowns and mandates. They've failed to keep our borders secure. They've weakened America's position on the global stage. It seems like everything they do is to the detriment of our great nation. But there are plenty of patriots with the courage to stand up to the left, and there's an easy way for you to stand with them. Join AMAC. AMAC is the conservative membership organization that's helping to make America great again. AMAC is a voice for conservatives that cannot be ignored. Stand with over 2 million America-loving patriots by joining AMAC today.